Welcome to this explainer. The book of Proverbs has captivated readers for thousands of years, but reading it straight through, well, it can feel a little bit like trying to drink from a fire hose of advice. So today, we're taking this massive 31-chapter collection of ancient aphorisms and distilling it into a highly practical, modern masterclass on human behavior.
Okay, let's jump right in. We're acting as your curator today, pulling all these disjointed proverbs together into 5 distinct, actionable pillars. The foundation of wisdom, the power of words, diligence, wealth, and work, pride, humility, and relationships, and finally, the legacy of character.
First up, pillar number 1, the foundation of wisdom. Before the text even touches on everyday life advice, it sets up a very clear, binary philosophical baseline. It all starts with this overarching concept called the fear of the Lord. According to the ancient authors, this is literally the beginning of knowledge. Now, this isn't about cowering in a corner in fear, right? It's about establishing an objective, moral baseline for your life. Without that overarching premise anchoring your worldview, the authors argue that true, lasting wisdom is essentially impossible to attain.
What's really fascinating is how they describe wisdom. They don't just treat it like an abstract idea. They literally personify wisdom as a woman crying out in the noisy, crowded streets, basically begging people to listen to her. She isn't hidden away in some remote monastery on a mountaintop. No, Lady Wisdom is right there in the public squares, interrupting your busy daily commute to offer guidance to anyone willing to just stop and pay attention.
And that beautifully illustrates the fundamental rhythm of the entire book. You are always standing at a literal fork in the road between two paths, the path of the wise and the path of the fool. There's no middle ground here. Choose the path of the wise man, and the text promises you'll live in safety, completely at ease. But if you drift down the path of the fool, well, your own complacency and rejection of knowledge will eventually destroy you. Let's move on to our second pillar, the power of words. This is where we see how that philosophical foundation translates into incredibly practical advice. The text makes a huge claim here. Our words have literal life and death consequences. I mean, think about that for a second. In our modern world with nonstop internet outrage and endless gossip, this is a massive reality check. We throw comments out so casually, but this ancient wisdom is telling us that absolutely everything we say is either actively building someone up or tearing them down. There's a very vivid physical contrast they draw to make this point. You've got the prudent person who restrains their lips to promote peace. And then, on the flip side, the quick-tempered fool who just blurts out whatever they're thinking. The text says those reckless words actually pierce like a literal sword, causing real emotional damage. But consciously choosing a gentle answer, that diffuses even the most explosive situations. It's essentially an ancient masterclass in emotional intelligence. Which brings us to our third pillar, diligence, wealth, and work. This section has some of the most vivid and honestly surprisingly funny observations about our work ethic.
Take this one, for example. It compares relying on a lazy person to getting vinegar on your teeth or smoke in your eyes. If you've ever had campfire smoke blow directly into your face or tasted something horribly, painfully bitter, you know exactly what they mean. It's a visceral, physical frustration, and that is exactly what it feels like to manage a sluggard who refuses to put in the work.
The authors are just relentless with this comparison. They point out that the diligent are forward-thinking. They're out gathering crops in the summer to ensure a prosperous future. But the sluggard? They crave the exact same results, but they're totally paralyzed. They fold their hands and invent absurd, worst-case scenario excuses to avoid stepping out the front door, like famously claiming there's a literal lion in the street. Then, over in Chapter 30, the Oracle of Agur lists 4 incredibly small creatures to drive this point home: ants, conies, locusts, and lizards. Ants have no commander but save up food for the winter. Conies, which are small, badger-like animals, build their homes in unshakable rock. Locusts advance in perfect ranks. And a tiny lizard can sneak its way into the most secure royal palace. The lesson? Organized, diligent consistency beats raw strength every single time. But, hard work and wealth can easily tip over into excess. Chapter 23 asks this really striking question. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? It forces us to pause and realize that financial success without disciplined character is an absolute recipe for disaster. They're warning us that self-indulgence, like gluttony or lingering over wine, will eventually bite you like a snake. It clouds your judgment, strips away the wealth you worked so hard for, and leaves you in total poverty. Wisdom isn't just about how you work. It's about knowing exactly when to say enough.
Okay, so that brings us to pillar number 4, pride, humility, and relationships. This explores the profound impact of how we treat the people closest to us.
There's this incredibly famous framing here about how iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. It shows that healthy relationships are an active and sometimes frictional process of mutual improvement. Real friends are not echo chambers, they challenge you. It takes a bit of heat and friction to sharpen a blade, and the exact same thing is true for human character. Because of that, you absolutely have to learn how to distinguish between true friends and deceitful ones. A real friend loves you enough to give you wounds you can trust, meaning they will risk the relationship to tell you a hard truth. An enemy, though, they multiply kisses. They'll flatter your ego and enable your worst habits because they genuinely do not care about your well-being.
And I absolutely love this visual metaphor. The text says that someone who is beautiful but shows no discretion is like a gold ring in a pig's snout. It hilariously illustrates that external beauty or wealth is completely absurd if it isn't paired with internal humility. You can dress a pig up in the finest jewelry on earth, but at the end of the day, it's still going to roll in the mud. A lack of character completely neutralizes outward attractiveness. And finally, we've reached our 5th and last pillar, the legacy of character. This is the ultimate result of choosing that path of wisdom over folly.
The 31st and final chapter ends with the famous epilogue of the wife of noble character, but it's really acting as a powerful metaphor for a legacy built on dignity, strength, and charity, rather than fleeting charm. She embodies literally everything we've talked about: diligent work, speaking with profound restraint, and opening her arms to the poor. It's this beautiful picture of what a fully realized, wise life looks like in practice. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question. Look closely at the blueprint of your own daily habits. Which path are you walking right now? Because every word you speak, every hour you work, and every friend you choose is either laying a brick in a house of wisdom or slowly tearing your foundation apart. The choice is yours.